You're listening to Shiny Side Out with Dave and Mecky. We are broadcasting live out of the studios in Sydney, Australia. At freedomslips.com, there is a chat room with tons of info. It's a powerhouse. I suggest you go there. Follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. At shinysideout.net, you can find our show notes and all the links we paste into the chat during the show. We share them with the chat room, and you can find them there. Get connected to Revolution Radio another way, because it's on air, online, and on your smart device. If you live in Kentucky, tune in on FM on WZZR 101.3. Otherwise, you can get an app. I'm not going to read them out. Everyone tells me it takes too long. So look for Shiny Side Out or Revolution Radio on your preferred online streaming service. All of those things are a Revolution Radio. Plus, you can get a Grace Tabletop digital radio, or if you're lucky enough to have a General Motors vehicle with a receiver-enabled radio, you can listen in too. Like I said, they're all revolutions in radio. Freedom Sips is not only a radio station, but it's a central hub for all of your information needs, including survival documents and everything like that. It is listener supported as well. And follow the links at the bottom of the homepage for all of your information needs. Now, you can buy a CD of your favorite hosts' 2014 or 15 season for $34.95 directly from the station, or if you live outside of the US, it costs a $39.95 for the increased shipping. Also, if you donate, follow the instructions, because if you donate a certain amount, you can receive a gift in return, like a USB stick with survival documents, 10,000 of them, by the way. Or, and it's an EMP-proof memory stick. How's that? That's really cool. That'll survive. I hope your computer is also EMP-proof and you have a source of electricity, but once you've done all that, you should be fine. There's also a 75,000 seed pack, but check with your local customs department, because you may not be able to import seeds from the US, as we can't here. So good luck and follow the instructions. If you're in the US, you can call in on 347-688-2902, or just add Freedom Screen to Skype and you can join in the call. But we do prefer that you talk to us in the chat room first, and if you've got something to bring up, we're happy to bring you into the call. We just don't want, people to hijack the conversation and take it, maybe drift it somewhere else. Conversations have a natural flow, and let's try to keep that going. If I open it up at the end to some questions to the guests, you're welcome to call in at that point. Well, there is no Mecky. He's meant to be, and in fact, he's still inside the US, but he can't get any conferencing services over there. He's hard-pressed to find reasonable Wi-Fi wherever he is, and he's struggling to be awake at this time. And he expects our guests to be awake. That's crazy. All right, so there once again, third show in a row, no Mecky. It's the Dave Show. Welcome to the Dave Show. And if it continues, isn't it only 2 periods of negative growth in a country and it becomes a recession, and 3 is a depression? Well, this would be a depression of Mecky, or Mecculous depression, or what, I don't know how you describe it. Anyway, I messaged George last night. That's our guest today, George Simpson. And I said, look, can you please be on the show? George has been on the show before, and when he was on the show last, we spoke about the Valentage case, and I might be, there might be a correction in my pronunciation, but the case is the Australian case of a missing plane, and it's the most famous because it includes the recording of the audio of the last known transmission from the plane. The plane was flown by a young fellow, but the story is famous in Australia, and certainly in ufology, it's one of the top cases on the planet. And it's certainly got a lot of missing information, but it's got a lot of really good information in there and some surprising revelations. But he's not here just to talk about it. We're going to talk about a lot of things. And thank you so much, George, for being with us.
All right. It's good to be here.
Thank you. And look, thanks for, there wasn't very much notice, to be honest, and I really do appreciate it. And happy birthday, by the way.
Thanks. Yeah, that was the other day. Yeah.
Now, I was going to say, tell me more. Let's start with you. Okay, so I remember when we spoke the last time, we focused really heavily on the Valentich case and really not much else. So this is a little bit more open forum. But I wanted to find out, how did you get into ufology at all? Like, what was the breaking steps that tore you away from whatever else you were doing?
Well, it was a gradual thing that's happened right throughout my life. Starting off with when we were kids, my sisters and I had two older sisters. We were walking down the street one day and we saw this very, very unusual light show in the sky above us, and we were gobsmacked. That looked like stars that were actually just separating from each other and moving away from each other, and it just got our attention. And we grew up in an era when there were a lot of UFO cases and sightings happening. Periodically these things do get into the news and into the press. So, and we grew up with TV shows like Star Trek was on TV, although I was never a big fan of Star Trek when I was a kid. But things like The Outer Limits, there was a different alien on TV every week, and we just accepted that as nothing so strange about that. It's a big universe, and so, although we knew they were fictional stories that we were watching, they seemed to mirror a possible reality, if you put it that way. That's what I thought anyway. We collected the bubblegum cards as kids, all these 50 different aliens.
Yes, I remember those
types of creatures. Yeah. Well, so then I read a book about UFOs in primary school. That they encouraged us to learn how to read and to read books, and I picked up one that was about UFOs. So I read that and I thought that was pretty interesting. And so, as you go through life, you see these different reports happen, different things happen, and over time, you either accept some of them or you don't, and whatever. There was a very famous case that happened here in Australia in the late 1980s, about 1987. That was the Knowles case.
Mm-hmm.
That was Faye Knowles and her boys were driving over to Melbourne from Western Australia.
Oh, that was the Nullarbor plane incident, wasn't it?
Yeah. And in the early hours of the morning, they saw this very unusual light, which was in front of them. They thought it was a car or a truck or something. It was sort of, they went past it and then it was chasing them. They were going pretty fast and it seemed to be chasing them. And it actually lifted their car up off the road and then dropped it with them in it. It frightened the heck out of them. It blew out a tyre when it hit the ground and everything. Anyway, that was a very well-known case, and that made headlines all around the world, that case. And as a result of that case, a fellow wrote a letter about UFOs to the newspaper, and I decided to ring him up and talk about it, because he made some very valid points in this article that he wrote that got published in the newspaper. And he encouraged me to go and join the local UFO group because he used to be a member years ago, but he didn't go anymore. He said, you should go along if you're that interested, go and check it out. So I did, and then I ended up joining that group, and that was the Victorian UFO Research Society. And that was in the late 80s, and I was with them as a member for about 4 or 5 years, and then I ended up being roped into getting on the committee. So once you're on a committee of something like that, that's when you really get to see what's going on. You get to see the reports that come in, and you get to know what the whole group are on about. And so, yeah, it just grew from there, really. But I did see, I'm 99% sure I did see Frederick Valentich flying over on the day he disappeared on the way to his encounter. because we live very
Wow.
close to Moorabbin Airport, and that's in the documentary where I said, you see me standing outside our letterbox and looking down the street and pointing up in the sky the angle that the plane flew over. The next morning they said on the radio that a plane had gone missing early that evening, the evening before. And I just thought straight away, it was probably that plane that I saw. But I didn't know for sure. But over the years, I've been able to figure it out that it was a blue and white Cessna heading directly for the setting sun, which is exactly due west, and that's where he was going, because he was heading straight to Cape Otway. So
wow. And there's something else that's risen from that also was the photograph, which is likely to have been him just flying over the water as he was leaving the mainland.
Oh yeah, that one that John Ockertell talked about on the documentary. Well, he says in the photo, he says on the documentary that if you look into that photograph, if you blow it up, you can see that it's Freddie. Well, I don't know if you can see it's Freddie. I mean, yeah, it is. It's probably in the right time frame. For the skeptics, another major stretch would be that that Roy Manifold's photo was of any interest at all, but it was taken about 15 to 20 minutes before Fred was in the area, and it's a very strange object in the sky, and that's very interesting. That he just happened to be photographing the setting sun. He did a series of photos over about a 3-minute period. He had only six shots left on his roll of film. He had a camera with a motor drive, and he just was looking at his watch and counting off the seconds. So he wasn't watching what was in front of him, but he was capturing the sun moving sinking down into the sea, kind of thing, and the clouds going past. And then he's captured this object, and he didn't see anything at the time. And it was at least a month after Fred went missing that he went and got his film developed. And when he got the photos back, he saw that there was this strange object, and he thought, oh, hang on, that was the night that Fred went missing. And so he was able to put it all together, and then the photos came out in the paper and everything, and the controversy began from about that point. But the photos, I think, are quite amazing.
So, just for everyone else, he left. Was it Moorabbin Airport?
Yeah, he took off at Moorabbin Airport, and he went over straight across Beaumaris, and straight across the Port Phillip Bay towards the Bellarine Peninsula, and then straight up along the coast to towards Cape Otway. When he got to Cape Otway, he did a right-hand turn to his left. So he was going from due west. He turned to go due south, and that was at about 7 o'clock. At about 7 p.m., he radioed the air traffic advisor and said, "Look, I'm at Cape Otway now and proceeding to King Island." So that was about 20 seconds past 7 p.m.
Oh, okay.
And then for about 6 minutes after that, there was just all these other aircraft radioing the air traffic advisors. See, all these light planes were flying around in uncontrolled airspace. It's only the big airliners and that are in controlled airspace, and they come under the control of the air traffic controllers. So if you're flying just in a light plane and you're nowhere near where the big airlines come and go, and you keep out of their way, then all you have is radio contact. People can advise you. They keep an eye on where you are and what you're doing, but you can get advice about weather or other aircraft in your area. And so that's what Fred did. He said he started seeing this strange object, and so he asked them, "Is there any traffic below 5,000?" Because he was flying at 4,500 feet,
which is a ceiling, isn't it, for him?
Well, it was just a good height to be flying.
Okay.
I don't think there's any regulations about. You can fly at various levels when you're flying. My understanding of it, because I'm not a pilot, but my understanding was what they try to do is have different levels. So if you're heading west, you're at a certain height. If you're heading east, you're at another height. So you don't go near each other. So anyway, he was at the regulation height that he should have been at. for where he was, and he was heading down to King Island. But he'd been flying for about 6 minutes after he left Cape Otway. Then he reported that he'd seen this unusual object, and they said, "No, we don't have anything in your area. There's nothing on radar or anything. There's no known objects flying around in your area, or no known aircraft in your area." And the audio broke up then. What was that you said, Dave?
That's okay.
I thought you said something then.
No, I didn't actually.
Oh, well, it must have been my own audio echoing back because it was breaking up.
Oh, right.
That's okay. But anyway, so he reported this unusual object, and they said, "No, you don't. There's nothing there." And he said, "Well, it just flew above me, 1,000 feet above me." I think most people would be familiar with this case by now, but at one stage he said it seems to be playing some sort of a game. He said and at one point he actually said it seems to be chasing me. Now, in the transcript, I think they made an error. They said it seems to be stationary, but that's how they transcribed it. But I did get to hear the recording, and he said it appears to be chasing me. What I'm doing is orbiting, and I think what he meant by orbiting was he was circling. He certainly wasn't doing a loop-the-loop. When you think orbiting, you think of something doing a loop-the-loop. But he wasn't doing that. He was circling so he could keep an eye out on this thing that was flying around him. And he said, what I'm doing is orbiting, and the thing is orbiting on top of me also. And he said it's got a green light, and it's all shiny on the outside. But then later on he reported that his engine was coughing, even though he was running it at 23,000 to 24,000 RPM. Oh, 2,400, sorry. 2,300, 2,400 RPM, which is your normal rev range for when you're cruising. But even at that cruise range, he said the engine was coughing. And that changed everything from that point, because the air traffic advisor now has almost an emergency happening, because he's got a pilot who's out over water, right, out over the Bass Strait, and he's saying he's got his engine's coughing, even though it's running at full. And that was also unusual because the plane had been serviced that morning and it ran perfectly all the way from Melbourne to Cape Otway. But after it was over the sea, after he was seeing this object flying around, it was starting to interfere with his engine. And so Steve Roby asked him at that point, what are your intentions? And I think he misunderstood the question at that point, because an air traffic advisor is wondering about where you are and what you're doing and where you're heading. If you're halfway across to the island that you're heading for, Steve is trying to find out, are you halfway or are you not yet halfway? Is it better to turn back to the land? Like, imagine if you had engine failure, you want to land, well, you're over the sea. So what are you going to do? Is it closer to go and land on the island, or attempt a landing on the island, or on the land? But all Fred said was, no, my intentions are to go to King Island. And then he said, that strange aircraft is hovering on top of me again. It is hovering, and it's not an aircraft. And then there wasn't much said after that. It was just, he called them again and said, this is, Fred said, he said, Melbourne, DSJ Melbourne. And then that metallic sound that you heard on the documentary started. Now, look, it's 3 years ago now that I found out about the, when we made that documentary and it went to air in Australia about 3 years ago, the Unexplained Files.
That's right.
One, and which had Dr. Haynes at the end of it, saying that metallic sound could be the result of the contact of the aircraft and this other unknown object. Well, we know he was running it at full cruise rev, so the propeller's spinning around, and you've got to think, well, what did he do? If these two vehicles in the air have come in contact with each other in the air, was it a collision? Did some big doorway open up and he got sucked inside or something? Or, did they actually crash? Did they connect in the air? If they did, well, that prop's still going. So what was going on? Now, from that report that this farmer came up with in Adelaide the next day, he claimed that he saw this big 90-foot in diameter or 30-metre circular aircraft hovering above him on this farm, and he said that there was an aircraft stuck on the outside of it. Now, that gives me the impression of like an insect stuck on a car bumper bar or something, like they've collided in the air. If this report is genuine. Now, I only got the report from Bill Chalker. Now, everyone who's listening has probably heard of Bill Chalker. He'd be the best known Australian UFO researcher worldwide.
That's right.
And when he first heard this report from the farmer, he thought it was too bizarre, and so he just shelved it. He didn't pursue it or anything, and he didn't tell anybody about it. But he did get this sound recording of this businessman recounting the story that the farmer had told him, but we don't have the farmer's name. So it's been 3 years now, and we can't make any progress because we don't have a name. You cannot form any kind of investigation if you don't have somebody's name.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very hard. It's very frustrating. Where do you start? I've gone through police records. I've asked the police to go through their records. Did anybody report seeing a missing plane the day after it went missing in the Adelaide area where this thing was seen, according to the farmer? Did anybody make any reports? Because if they did, we might be able to find out who that person was.
Mm-hmm.
But no, there was an army exercise going on in the area at the time, on the day it happened. And we don't have any details about that because we know it happened. We were able to confirm with the army that they did have this exercise. And on the tape, this fella says the thing flew off with the aeroplane still stuck to the outside of it. It flew off towards where the military exercises were happening, and that's on the tape.
Mm.
So we checked up, and there was a military exercise in that area on that day. So and he said there was oil running down the outside of the plane, that it was stuck backwards onto the side of this disc object.
Oh, so because the Cessna has an overhead wing.
Yeah,
and
but
so
the wings were back up against the side of this object.
Yeah, okay.
The engine at the top and the tail at the bottom and the wings out sideways, and the wheels would have been sticking out.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
And he saw it because he thought this object was going to come down on top of him because it wasn't going very fast. He thought it was about to fall down on the ground, so he ran to the side to get clear of the edge of it. And when he looked back, that's when he saw the plane was stuck on the outside of it. And he could see the registration number of the plane, and he scratched that into his tractor with a nail so he wouldn't forget it.
Wow.
And the registration number was DSJ. It was the missing plane that went missing the day before.
That's amazing. But that wasn't.
It's a.
That the registration
story,
the registration of the plane wouldn't have been, and in all the newspaper articles and everywhere, I can't see anywhere where it identifies the plane registration. So that would be an unlikely get, wouldn't it? Like if he couldn't just make it up, and it didn't appear to have been written anywhere in that same period of time. So, yeah. You know what I mean. So
I'd have to look at the newspaper articles to check that.
Yeah, I've got two of them up at the moment, and I couldn't see. I've got one from the Australian, which says plane vanishes after loud metallic noise, and really, even zoomed up in this thing, I can't see. I just can't see that there is any text saying anything about the plane rego. Because they don't normally announce it, even on the news. If there's a plane missing, they won't tell you what plane rego is to go and find it, because if there's a report, it could be falsified. So they usually keep that information candid, and if any reports come in of it, then they can verify it against the actual plane rego. So that's an astonishing link to the case, isn't it, with the farmer?
Well, can you imagine what that would look like if you got a movie crew to do a reproduction of the view, what that farmer saw?
Mm-hmm.
His story was that he had a hay baling apparatus on the back of his tractor, so he was baling hay. He was harvesting the hay for stock feed on a Sunday morning, as the morning after Fred disappeared. But he didn't know that. He was just harvesting this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
and he heard this screeching, loud noise, this loud screeching sound. It's a pretty detailed report. It's on I've had it on my Facebook page for a few years now, so people could go to my Facebook page and scroll down to a couple of years back and find it and play it and listen to it. It could even be on YouTube, or I could possibly give you a link to it so people could listen to it. But it's just the guy recounting the story. But what the farmer saw, at first he just had this noise. He thought there was something wrong with his equipment, and it was all driven by the tractor engine. So he uncoupled it and then jumped off the tractor and ran around the back to have a look to see what's gone wrong. But the noise continued, and he couldn't figure out, hang on, I just disconnected it. How come it's still making a noise? And then he realized he was in a shadow, and he looked up, and there was this big circular thing hovering above him, which surprised the heck out of him. And he was a pilot, because a lot of farmers are pilots because they do their own crop dusting. And this thing wasn't going very fast, and he thought it was below stalling speed and it was going to fall. But he was able to observe a number of things about this object while it was above him. One was that on the outer rim of it, there was a ring that was spinning very quickly in one direction. And just inside that, there was another ring that spun in the opposite direction. So there were these counter-rotational circular rings underneath the outer edge of this object, which was, 90, he said, 30 meters across, 90 feet across. That's 30 meters. Now, he said one of them was spinning so fast that you had to blink to tell that it was actually moving. The other one was going very slowly. He said they had little lines on them that you could see the movement, because they had these little lines. You could see that they were rotating. And then he noticed that towards one end of this round object, there was two, probably about a meter in diameter or something. There were two holes. He said one had shimmering heat coming out of it, and the other had spurts of flame coming out of it, and it was making this screeching noise. And one of the rings was spinning fast and one wasn't. So he thought there's something wrong with this thing and it's coming down. And that's why he ran away. He ran to the side to get clear of it. And that's when he saw there was this thing stuck on the outside of it, which he said it was the Cessna. And he copied the number and scratched it onto his tractor when he got back to his tractor.
That is so incredible. Look, all the farmers. Yesterday, I actually watched a documentary on the ploughing competitions in Victoria, where all the farmers get together and plough as accurately as they can, and they're judged on it. And these fellows, when they were talking, these fellows were so mechanically inclined and understood their machines so well that they were talking about millimeters of accuracy over 100 yards.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for the fellow to get off thinking it was his own machinery, his ploughing device, and then to uncouple it, still hearing it, and then making an evaluation on this thing he's never seen before, is so mechanically minded when you think about it. That it, also from a flight perspective, it was going too slow. He thought it was already had stalled and was going to come down on the ground. Unbelievable. So what's next?
And pretty innovative to get a nail from somewhere and scratch it into your tractor. Didn't have a notebook or a computer with him, so he scratched it into his tractor with a nail.
There's no mobile phones, and he was probably going to be doing the ploughing for the rest of the day. He wasn't going back. It's very, very innovative. Yes. So,
well, there was more to the story. It got a little bit more strange. The story.
How so?
Well, he later on said that it was still making the screeching noise when it flew off in the area where the military manoeuvres were going on, where the army base was, somewhere in that area, somewhere around Keith, Murray Bridge, somewhere down there near Adelaide, in South Australia. Anyway, so he saw this thing fly off, and that was the last he saw of it. Now, he said that afternoon he went into town to do some shopping or something, and his neighbour saw him and said to him, "Oh, I see you're doing some more crop spreading." He said, "No, what are you talking about?" He said, "Oh, I saw the Cessna down in your in your paddock this morning?"
Hmm.
I said, "No, there's no plane in my paddock, mate. I don't know what you're talking about." He said, "Yes, there is. I was down there. I saw this plane down on your airfield at the end of your property this morning." I said, "Well, that's interesting. I'll go down and have a look at that when I get back." So he's done his shopping. He's gone back home that afternoon, and he's gone down in his back paddock to look for this aircraft. And he didn't find any aircraft, but there was tyre marks in the grass where there had been an aircraft.
Mm.
And at the end of the tyre marks, there was a pool of oil.
Oh, what?
Some engine oil on the ground, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that opens up a whole lot of new. Well, how did that happen? Did that flying saucer come back and drop the aircraft onto the ground or something, and then pick it up and take it away again? We don't know. It's a very, very strange ending to that story. But this is what this farmer had said to this businessman who lived in Coonabarabran. The reason that Bill Chalker got the story was he went up there to investigate a whole lot of cases. Every second person he spoke to in Coonabarabran said, "Oh, you must talk to this bloke called Laurie."
Oh, wow.
And Laurie was this businessman who ran the hardware store in Coonabarabran. He spoke to every customer that came in and kept a journal of all the UFO reports because he was interested in UFO reports. And there was a lot of activity going on in Coonabarabran around that time. From what I can gather, it was probably around the late 1990s that the report came in, and that Bill got this report about 1992. Bill made the tape recording about 1992. So that's a while ago now. And, of course, the guy who's talking on the tape has now died some 8 or 9 years ago.
Oh.
I've got his son checking out for me at the moment. I was talking to his son on Facebook just a few days ago. He's trying to track down who the farmer was because we have no idea who that farmer was. So, yeah. Interesting, isn't it?
It sure is. Now, so the plane goes missing, and it's on the news. There's a search for the plane as well.
Mm-hmm.
So how big was this search?
It went for almost a week, and they tried to cover most of Bass Strait. I mean, it's a big area, so they concentrated on close by to where they last, where he was last over the land. But of course, the guy who took that photo, Roy Manifold, said he knew something had happened the next morning because that next morning there were planes everywhere crisscrossing the whole area where he was. He said one of these search planes came so close you could see the pilot in it, But they got a special an Air Force plane from South Australia and flew it over because it had very sophisticated avionics. It was an Orion aircraft that is full of avionics. They can scan the bottom of the ocean from a height, and they were looking for any aircraft, of course, in the sea, but they never found anything. Just about 3 years ago, the government finally released the entire case file on the Valentage case, which they'd had in the archives for years. They released it thanks to a request, a Freedom of Information request that was put in by Keith Basterfield, and that had a whole lot of documents we'd never seen before. But of course, there's nothing new came of it, except that there was a piece of a Cessna found 5 years after Fred disappeared. A piece of a Cessna was found, but it was only a little tiny piece of metal, smaller than your average, paperback novel sort of thing.
Oh, right,
a small piece of aluminium. It was a part of an air intake from the engine cowling of a Cessna. But it was found washed up on the beach at Flinders Island, and that's about 300 kilometres away from King Island. And it was 5 years later, and it was only 100 metres from the landing strip on Flinders Island. So it's much more likely to have come from a Cessna that was landed or taken off from Flinders Island.
Oh, yes.
Now, the serial number on the part was consistent with the serial numbers that were issued at the time that the DSJ was built, but it wasn't an exact match. But for the skeptics, that's enough to say, oh, well, we know what happened. We've found a part of the plane. It's gone into the sea. That's the end of the story. But they've never heard that there was a farmer who said he saw a flying saucer the next day and then there was a UFO stuck on, an aircraft stuck on it, which sounds a very bizarre story, but it answers a lot of questions. I mean, if there was an aerial collision and that made that metallic noise on the end of the tape, then you would expect nothing would have fallen off and gone into the sea. So it sort of possibly answers a few questions. I don't know. But it's very, very hard. It would be great to find. I would love to find the tractor with the nail, with the registration number scratched onto the tractor. I'd love to find that.
Yes, absolutely.
I would love to meet the farmer and interview the farmer. And I said Laurie Ryder was the guy on the tape who passed away years ago, but he's the guy who recounted the story of the detailed story that the farmer told him. And I was talking to his son on Facebook, and I said to the son, I said to him, listen, if you do find that farmer, I'm coming up there. I'll just jump on a plane. I'll be up there and I'm going to interview him. I'll have my camera. I'm going to videotape it and get him talking on tape, because that'd be a fantastic interview to get.
Oh, wouldn't it?
To talk. Yeah, but we don't know his name, so it's very, very difficult. I had a huge phone bill. I made phone calls to farmers. I got a mate of mine in New South Wales who had a list of all the business people in country areas, and I rang all of them up and interviewed them all. They all thought I was crazy, of course, but that doesn't matter. I'm trying to find, has anyone heard of this story? It's very difficult. You can't just ring everybody up. I made a discovery too. Thanks to telemarketers, most people that live in rural areas, rural Australia, don't answer their phone. If it rings, they just won't answer it. They'll let the answering machine get it, and they might get back to you if they're sure that you're not a telemarketer.
Wow.
So thank you, telemarketers, for screwing up research for the rest of us. Very frustrating.
Oh, we all get those calls, and do you know what? That it's of continuing interest to me ever since, because as like you, I saw my first UFO when I was in primary school, and I actually kept my own project Blue Book. And I wrote all of the events into it. It's long gone. I did some really great diagrams in it. I think my parents had kept it or squirreled it away. But this is one of those cases. It was within my living memory. It occurred, while I was growing up, and we never saw the end. We never came to a conclusion other than the mystery of.
Oh, that's right.
Of the continuing mystery. It's so fascinating to hear, though, especially on the Unexplained Files version, where they did throw a couple of differing ideas up, and the I think it satisfied the armchair skeptics enough for them to dismiss it, and that is that. The metallic sound, was just, he'd got himself into a spiral and was upside down and disorientated, and he was actually seeing his own reflection in the water, and and that sound would have been false. Him crashing. I know it's all false. Yes, but it annoys me. It's like grinding a cheese grater against your thigh. Listening to the preposterous explanation from someone who is so disjointed away from it, just trying to pull this. Actually, I think it's their job to make the people who are getting a little bit too unsettled about this notion of a UFO to make them comfortable and go, that's all it was. It doesn't matter. Does it pain you as much?
It could be a very disturbing case, couldn't it?
Well, think about it. I mean, we've the law now, the UFO law, I suppose we could call it. UFOs are usually silent. They're running from some kind of propulsion, anti-gravity propulsion system. We would imagine there'd be some kind of magnetic field around them, a field of some kind. Maybe magnetic is not the way to describe it. Planes are made of metal, though the metal is lightweight and not usually steel. But there would be a steel rod.
Engine block.
The engine block is steel.
Ferrous.
Yes, absolutely. Ferrous metal, yep. Magnetic. And there's also two steel rods that usually connect the wings to the body, certainly in large aircraft, whether it's titanium or another metal. Those just being able to suggest and have the witnesses talk about an object with a plane stuck to the side, I think that's an extraordinary difference. That differentiates this case from all others. The thing that's like all the others is his explanation of what the lights are doing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, no, it's completely different there too.
How so?
Oh, look, he gives such a detailed description of not how it looks, but what it's doing. He says, he said, it seems to be playing some sort of a game.
Yeah.
It's passing over me at 2 to 3 times at a time at speeds I cannot identify. Now, think about that. What can move across above you, come and go at 2 to 3 times at a time at speeds that you can't identify?
Wow.
That's an amazing description. And he said that while he was flying the plane. He's flying the plane. He's holding the microphone with one hand, steering the plane with the other.
Mm-hmm.
And he was doing that for 6 or 7 minutes.
Wow.
Right? So,
yeah.
It was doing some pretty weird stuff, So there was a lot of things about this case that are different to other cases. They didn't even find an oil slick in the water. They did find some oil, but it was marine oil that they found because they analysed it.
Mm-hmm.
There's been virtually no closure for the family because their eldest son is still missing. He's never come back. When we were doing the Unexplained Files documentary, and we went to his younger brother's house and interviewed the younger brother. His Frederick's mother and grandmother were there. The grandmother was still alive when we did that. That's about 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So all these generations have no answer and still have no answer. The only way that they could get closure at the time, the family, was to have a memorial ceremony kind of thing down at Cape Otway, and that was about 20 years after Fred had disappeared. So that was 1998 they did that, when they presented that metallic plaque, the stainless steel plaque on a post down there at Cape Otway, right near the Cape Otway lighthouse. I've been down there to look at it. I went down for the first time to see the plaque last year, actually. It's about a 5 or 6 hour drive to get down there. It's a long way down to Cape Otway from Melbourne. And but I flew down there once with a friend. It only took an hour or so to fly down there and back. Well,
is that his last over the mainland land contact?
Yeah, the Cape Otway lighthouse.
Yeah.
And when he got there, that's when he said, I'm at Cape Otway proceeding to King Island, and then 6 minutes after that he reported that he was being buzzed by this thing. So he's well over. How far can you go in 6 minutes in a plane that's going, 105 knots, whatever that is in miles an hour?
Yeah.
Or kilometres.
Yep.
But he's headed straight out over the sea. Though the skeptics have tried to say that he only saw these planets. There was 4 or 5 planets right in front of him. They were right in front of him when he was going west. And when I saw him going over by Morris, he was heading west. He would have seen the planet. It was daytime. The plane was up in the daytime. It was afternoon shade where I was, but the plane was up in the bright sunshine. This blue and white plane. But by the time he got down to Cape Otway, which was about 7 o'clock, so it was only half an hour or so after, or 3/4 of an hour after I saw him, which is about right. The Cessnas do go pretty quickly. But he was looking straight at the planets the whole time, and then he turned, and he wasn't looking at the planets anymore. He was looking south, due south, because King Island was due south from where he was.
Mm-hmm.
So he wasn't looking at the planets. No, so many things have come up. They've even Phil Klass tried to accuse him of stealing the aircraft.
What?
That's why it disappeared. That was never seen again. Here he said that there was a plot between Guido's father and the pilot. Fred's father, Guido.
Mm-hmm.
The two of them were plotting to steal an aeroplane, and that's why we've never found the aeroplane. Well, we've never found the sun either, but the aeroplane never.
Both of them disappeared. Yeah.
These guys will stop at nothing to come up with any explanation other than what's there evidentially in the case. The guy was reporting this thing flying around him. Another thing, though, that you don't know. Look, part of the problem is the family don't want this audio recording released to the public because it's their son's last words before he disappeared. And they still have no closure. They haven't had a funeral service. There's no body to bury. There's nothing. Mm-hmm. So it's an open wound for them still after 37 years.
And so the audio we heard on the documentary was a recreation of the audio from the transcript, wasn't it? No. That was the actual sound from the tape.
Oh wow! On the document.
Yeah. Okay.
It was actually just the actual thing. I was fortunate enough to be allowed to have a listen to it at one stage. Mm-hmm. And so, that's the real thing, that noise. And I believe that is the sound of the prop cutting into something. And it only goes for 17 seconds. Now, aviation experts have told me, and that's in the documentary too, that if you were to turn a plane upside down, which is another ridiculous explanation from the skeptics, if the plane was slightly inverted, if you fly the plane upside down, everything that's in the plane falls to the ceiling and the floor mats fly up and hit you in the face. Mm-hmm. Gravity. And also, the way that the Cessna's designed, look, I was talking to Steve Roby about this. He's not only an air traffic controller, an air traffic advisor, a pilot instructor, a flight instructor. He's also an aerobatics instructor. He knows all about aircraft.
Oh, yes.
They didn't even go into those details in the documentary. He's the man. If you want to be in contact with somebody about aviation, he's the guy to talk to. Now, he said that if you fly a Cessna upside down, you can fly a Cessna upside down, but it's not a very pleasant experience. You're hanging by your seatbelt, right? And if you drop, you're going to drop on your head on the roof.
Yep.
And he's holding the mic in one hand, flying a plane upside down and talking at the same time? No. He wouldn't have been talking. He might have been screaming or yelling, but he wouldn't have been flying upside down. And if you do fly a Cessna upside down, it won't do that for long because it's a gravity-fed engine.
It'll starve it of fuel.
It's going to run out.
Yep.
It's going to run out of fuel in 30 seconds. Within 20 seconds, the aviation experts said, and that was 17 seconds on the tape. Now, if the plane got stuck to the side of that object, as the farmer reported the next day, if that's true, the position he said the plane was in also complied with the engine being higher than the wings. Rather, when the plane is flying, the wings are above the engine, so you get gravity feed. Mm-hmm. But if this was stuck the way the farmer described it, with the wings back up against the side of the object with the engine at the top and the tail hanging down, there you go. You got your engine above the wings. You're not getting your gravity feed, and the prop was still going and going bang, bang, bang into the side of the thing. It's damaged the prop, and that's why there's oil flowing down the outside of the plane. It all sort of adds up,
It all seems to make sense if that's
substantial.
Exactly. We're coming to the top of the break, the top of the hour, which is a 2-minute break. I was wondering, is there, because of the military exercise that was going on in the area, I'm only trying to throw this out there. It just says in conversation. I'm not saying this is the thing. But do you think it's possible? Stan Deyo was talking about anti-gravity being created by the world scientist in Australia back around about the same period of time. Is it possible that there was... I think it is possible, but whether or not we think this is the direction it would have gone is another thing. If we'd made something, it clearly would have been classified. We'd never know about it. I would prefer that it was aliens because it confirms their existence. This is one of those confirming their existence things. And if we've done anything as a human race, we've wanted to know that we're not alone. But if it was military, I think we're not going to get any information at all. I don't think it's going to lead us to any, unless someone was willing to give it up. You know.
You've raised a very interesting thing, the Standeo thing. I'm not sure if it was Standeo, but I was contacted by some people via email who had read one of my articles about this farmer story. It's been in the Ufologist magazine, and somebody contacted me and got my email and sent me an email. They said that they were talking about this case, and the parents could remember seeing something on the Don Lane show.
I remember the Don Lane show.
And, yes, well, this was some military guy from America, and it could have been Standeo. I don't know.
Yeah,
sort of thing he might have done, but it could have been. So I thought it was some highly decorated military guy. Said he was going to tell us something about the Valentich case that we didn't know, that we had a right to know, and he was worried about his security and his wife's security, and he demanded an armed escort to and from the TV channel, from Channel 9, to do this Don Lane show, and he wanted to go on air and tell us, and it went to air, and he told the story, and it was connected to the Valentich case. And if you want to talk about that after your break,
sure.
We'll go into the detail.
I would absolutely love it. See, this is... I remember seeing the case that we started with the family crossing the Nullarbor and their car being lifted up. I remember seeing that go to air. And see, my father was a policeman. And he said, you know what, we get calls, not like this one, but we get calls where people see something all the time. And he said, we've seen them too. We usually don't document it because you'll get laughed out of the station when you get back. It's very courageous of anyone in law enforcement. You see it occasionally, but for the most part, they'll get 30 calls. Someone can see something in the air, and then they'll go out and have a look. And if they see it, and they'll walk back and go, "Did you see anything?" He goes, "Nope." Didn't see anything. Oh,
exactly.
Yeah. Because they ridicule is a terrible thing, and we know when pilots have landed and filled in a report, which is actually mandatory, if they should see something, that they can't go public. If they do, then they lose their jobs. I think
they can do, yes.
Yeah, they can. That flight over Alaska with the Japan Airlines cargo flight. That guy it's not usually favourable for the pilot, and it's not a career enhancing move to report it. But those who do, they help us along our journey here, trying to find out what's really going on. And wow, I just saw Meki come online. I wonder if he's got any bandwidth. I'll see if I can talk to him during the break. And any second the music should start. It's usually about 20 seconds past. Anyway, it's a fascinating realm, and I can't wait to hear more about it. What I'm going to ask everyone to do is take the opportunity during the break to jump into the chat room at freedomslips.com and push the donate button. I'm sure you've got a lazy 5 or a lazy 10, or if you'd like to, subscribe to get access to the archives, and you can listen to and download as an MP3 all the shows you like. Anyway, you're not allowed to put them up on YouTube or share them out, but they're there for your access. Goodness me, where is this? Where's the music? Yeah, is there something going on? Oh, it's not fair. Anyway, it's a pleasure having you on, George, and I look forward to talking to you after the break as well. Let me see. It looks like your video's gone south on us. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, turn it off and turn it back on again. That can help. All right. So, yeah, look, it's just spinning around. I'll drop you from the call during the break and bring it back on. Goodness me, where is this music? I bet it. The moment I do anything, it's going to make it start up again. Ah, oh, so not professional. Come on, guys, what are you doing? Nope, still no music. Oh well, let's just push on. So this was, like I said before, that this is one of those cases. In just a quick plug, in my accounts of my experience, I saw an object fly through the sky, very low to the ground, perfectly orange and glowing like a hot metal, but causing a vapor around it in one of the layers of the atmosphere, as it was so close and we were next to the ocean. And my brain told me, and this is why I connected to this, George, you'll understand, that it was flying too slow to have any lift, and that it would come down, it would crash into the ground. And I didn't want to drive my car beneath it, because I believed that's what it was going to do. It was crossing the road above me, in front of me, and I slowed down to avoid going beneath it, but just watched it sail on by. It was a perfect sphere, an orange with a hot yellow, very hot yellow. It concerned me that maybe a plane engine had fallen off. And this is the rational thought of my brain. Exactly right on 5 o'clock. Look at that. All right, take a short break to donate. See you after the break. We'll be back with George as a guest.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be
You're back with Dave and Mecky's Shiny Side Out on freedomslips.com. That's right, the number one listener-supported talk radio in the world, as Hawk says, and it's probably true. In fact, I know it to be true. Since it is listener-funded radio and you like what you hear, please go to freedomslips.com and push the donate button. It's on the site support page. It's on the left-hand side if you're in the chat, and your donation is greatly appreciated and helps run this station. I'd like to say hello to all the new listeners we have out there today. Thank you very much for joining, and I hope it's value to you. We're glad you're on board. Everyone who's subscribed to YouTube and Blogger and all the other things, welcome aboard. I hope your journey's easier now that you've got this information. Okay, we're halfway through show number 2. Oh, goodness me, which one is it? Let me have a look. It's 233. We have a guest, George Simpson. He's one of the key. Can I call you the key investigator, George?
Maybe recent